So, we're going to look at the conditions that led to the collapse of the Weimar Republic. First one, impact of the war. So we've got the stab in the back myth that socialists and Jews had lost Germany the war. As historian McGonagall says, there is little doubt that the stigma of the so-called November criminals hung like a giant shadow over the period of Weimar Germany, so it was always there. However, all attempted coups have been suppressed by 1923, so there was no violent takeover, and extremist parties even then had to see democracy as their way to power. Reparations. There was a national opposition against this idea that Germany should pay reparations, which is part of the impact of the war. So in 1929 there was national opposition. It was a group of right-wing parties organised together to oppose the Young Plan, but they were unsuccessful. 1932 reparations payments had ended anyway, so that's not a factor in the financial issues of the Great Depression. So again, it's not really the impact of war. Territory. All British and French soldiers had left by 1930, had left the Rhineland by 1930. Historian Geary says, no one in the right mind would claim that the terms of the Treaty of Versailles did not play a major role in the collapse of the Weimar Republic. But was it really the main reason? If you think about it, the Weimar Republic lasted for 15 years, and 14 of those years were after the Treaty of Versailles, so it can't be a direct thing, even if it did play a role. Economic factors. So, as you know, 29th of October 1929, the Wall Street crash happened in the United States, where the United States economy was going badly for a couple of years at least. However, that wasn't seen in Wall Street, where people thought the economy would carry on growing, so they were buying shares, and then all of a sudden people went into panic selling, and this caused the collapse of the US stock market. As we said, Germany was dancing on the edge of a volcano, as Stresemann said. US loans are then called in, and investment ends in the German economy. This is shown, a good statistic to show this is foreign capital is reduced from 5 billion marks in 1928 to just 700 million marks in 1930. So foreign capital kept in Germany has now almost disappeared. The impact is that the German economy suffers. Some good statistics here. 1930 to 32, 50,000 businesses go bankrupt. 1932, 18,000 farmers go bankrupt. 1932, 6 million are now unemployed. 1930, the Müller's Grand Coalition falls apart and Brüning is named Chancellor. Brüning's economic policy. Basically, he wanted to cut government spending in order to to not return to hyperinflation, and also make sure that they don't pay any more reparations. So as he says here, only deflation, which is the opposite of inflation, would convince the world that Germany could not afford to pay reparations. So he drastically reduces government expenditure, drastically reduces the wages of civil servants, and increases taxes. The impact is government deficit was reduced by 38%, which sounds great. And 1932 reparations were suspended, so he didn't have to pay any more. However, he's known as the Hunger Chancellor. So we can see up here the soup kitchens. All of these policies might sound good for the government's books, but it's not good for the everyday people. Historian Geary says that the economic crisis acted as a trigger, occasioning the abandonment of a political system that had already lost its legitimacy. So Geary's kind of saying it was political problems and it was just the economy that made things 10 times worse. So now we get on to this. What were these political problems? 1930 election. Because of proportional representation, no one party holds a majority, and now there's no real coalition. So there are 6 different chances between 1928 and 33. Chancellor Brüning, here he is on the right, calls an unnecessary election, hoping that his coalition, his group of parties would win. Instead, it leads to the rise of extremism. So the Nazi Party go from 800,000 votes, which is 12 seats in 1928, to 6.4 million in 1930, which is 107 seats, so a huge increase. Communist Party also increases from 3 million and 54 seats in 1928 to 5 million and 77 seats in 1930. The impact, the Reichstag increasingly cannot pass laws, leading to the increased use of Article 48 by the Brüning government, making the state more authoritarian. So even before Hitler, democracy is losing its way. Evidence of this is that in 1930, the Reichstag passes 98 laws, only 5 using Article 48, whereas in 1932 only 5 laws are passed by the Reichstag, whereas 66 are passed with the emergency Article 48. Initially, the socialists actually support Brüning because they're so worried about another election and extremists on either side kind of taking over. As the Socialist Party said, anything but Hitler. 1932 presidential election, Hindenburg defeats Hitler, so the socialists actually support Hindenburg. Historian Kolb says that Brüning, so he blames Brüning. Brüning is the first chancellor in the process of destroying German democracy, whereas Furtwängler, he sticks up for him. He says that Brüning was the last chancellor to govern with any kind of constitutional legitimacy. 1932, Brüning is finally removed for reasons to do with the elite, that he was going to reduce the power of the Junkers. So Hindenburg doesn't like that, gets rid of him. Then what happens? A new guy comes in, this guy, von Papen. Von Papen takes over, he's named chancellor. He's not very pro-democracy. With the support of the elite, but he has almost no support in the Reichstag at all. In June, he lifts the ban on the SA, which is the Nazi private militia. In July, using Article 48, he gets rid of the socialist government of Prussia, which is a local government. So he gets rid of them. Impact, they have the July elections. What happens? Extremist parties receive 51% of the vote. So for the first time, a majority of the vote goes against the Weimar Republic, with the Nazis becoming the largest party. It looks like Hitler is going to be made chancellor. However, Hindenburg hates him, and he calls him the Bohemian Corporal. Why? Because Bohemia is like a poor, kind of down-ridden part of, it's not even Germany actually, it's part of Austria. And a corporal is a lower-ranked person in the army, whereas Hindenburg looks more to Prussia, and he's obviously one of the top generals. So it's a way of saying we do not want Hitler. There are more elections in November of 1932. Nazis remain the largest party, but they lose 2 million votes. In fact, there are even rumours that Hitler tried to commit suicide at this point because he realised the game is over. However, the Communist Party do gain votes. They get 11 more seats. So this is still against the Weimar Republic, even if it's the Nazis start losing votes. Impact, in December, von Papen is removed as Chancellor in favour of von Schleicher. However, von Schleicher is then removed 1 month later after his attempt at what the elite called agrarian Bolshevism. Basically, von Schleicher wanted to help out farmers and kind of take over some of the land, and he's removed as well. It was kind of a deal, actually. So January 1933, von Papen and Hitler make a deal that would make Hitler Chancellor and von Papen Vice-Chancellor, with the support of the army as well. So von Papen gets rid of von Schleicher using Hitler. Historian Ardek says by the mid-1920s, many Germans were losing faith in the very principle of parliamentary democracy. This was above all the cancer that killed Weimar. So many right-wing Germans had turned against the democracy. So the last part of conditions is social division. During times of crisis, women's equality was sacrificed. So in 1931, women protested the arrest and trial of abortion doctors Wolf and Kienel. 1932, the law mandated all married female civil servants with secure economic position be fired, supported by all parties except for the communists. So even the socialists were against women in the workplace because they wanted to support their male members. The impact Nazi propaganda focused on, as Passau and DL urged, motherly instincts that resides in every woman. So the Nazis kind of took advantage of this kind of anti-woman sentiment in Germany. July 1932 election, female vote in Bavaria increased from 14% to 26%. So actually more women were actually voting. But reduced again to 24% in the November elections, but still higher than it was before. Female membership in the Communist Party reached 45,000. in 1933. After 1929, Germany becomes divided along class lines. Working class members tended to join the communists. So if you were unemployed or working class, you didn't support the Nazis. That was kind of a bit of a myth that people don't quite realise. So working class joined the communists. For example, in 1930 they had 180,000 members. 1932 they had 260,000 members. However, this actually helped Hitler. So in 1930 Hitler used fear of communism to get support from industrialists. So he starts getting big business involved. Many Nazis themselves didn't like this, but anyway, this is what Hitler decided to do. Alfred Hugenberg, a very rich industrialist who owned a chain of newspapers, and Fritz Thyssen, another very rich steel manufacturer, along with other industrialists, formed the Harzburg Agreement. This is a kind of an agreement amongst right-wing parties, including the Nazis. Historian Harman says the generals and industrialists estimated that ruling with the Nazi movement that would destroy the working class organisations was preferable. So before this they didn't like the Nazis, but now they thought, well, actually we need them to stop the communists. Historian Peterson says big business and junkers were generally disinclined to join or vote for the Nazis. So this is true as well. The communists said that the Nazis were just big business. There was just capitalist reaction. It's not quite true. The big business and junkers never actually voted for the Nazis or supported them, but they kind of went along with them because they were preferable to the communists. 1932, there's a Berlin transport strike. Some middle class felt alienated as the Nazis actually supported the workers, so this was not successful for the Nazis, thus reducing their votes in the November election. So it explains why their vote dropped. Remember, the Nazis they're supposed to kind of support the workers. It's got the workers in the original name. So this is not, there's a mix of extreme left and extreme right in the Nazis. Historian Falter, according to our estimates, probably 1 in 3 workers backed the NSDAP, so they backed the Nazis. That still means that 2/3 of workers did not support the Nazis. November elections, the Nazis lose 34 votes in the Reichstag. 1930 to 33, 50% of working class recruits to Nazis to the party were unemployed. So many of the working class didn't actually have a job, so they weren't workers. Anti-Semitism was not a major reason for support. So this is another thing, the social division. We always think about the anti-Semitism of the Nazis. Generally, it didn't work for them. 14% of members said they joined primarily for anti-Semitism. So in other words, 86% of members did not. Historian Brustein, the Nazi Party did not gain its phenomenal mass constituency because of its emphasis on xenophobia. So they didn't become popular because of racism. In fact, 1932, Hitler stops talking about Jewish people because he realizes it's not working. So have a think about these questions.